Hello and welcome back to Pics and Portraits. In case you didn't know, I am Canadian, fortunately, and in a less connected world, this meant media alternatives, to America at least. Instead of MTV, we had Much Music, the Comedy Network instead of Comedy Central, and Teletoon, not Cartoon Network. Now, I grew up in a rural area on the northern shore of Lake Ontario. It was so remote, cable wasn't even available, and so for TV, we had to rely on terrestrial antenna. Weather permitting, this would sometimes pick up American channels, usually from Rochester, or on a clear night Buffalo. Obviously, I'd seen American shows before. American content was licensed to Canadian channels, but with the news and the commercials, this was a window into another culture at a time I was becoming cognizant. I was unaware of the political differences between the two countries, being six, and living in such close proximity that line or border was often blurred. I was exposed to their pop culture. I watched American movies. The toys I played with were based on American properties. And when I did become aware of CanCon, Canadian content, the first thing I noticed was budget. Clearly, Canada was working with a lot less. Well, the technology had existed for decades. Satellite TV really began seeing widespread use in North America with the launch of DirecTV in 1994. My parents got in on this, which was sort of a legal gray area. Now, I did a little bit of research and learned, well, it wasn't technically illegal for Canadians to own an American satellite and receiver, and satellite signals couldn't be blocked or region locked. It was illegal for American companies to intentionally broadcast their signals into Canada. Still, this didn't stop 300,000 Canadians from exploiting this loophole, and the grey market flourished. Overnight, we went from having maybe 5 staticky channels, if we were lucky, to nearly 100 in crystal clear digital, with my favorites being Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network. Now, I doubt either of these need an introduction, but both specialized in children's programming with a focus on animation. I loved it, but was too young to fully appreciate the fact that this really was a new golden age of original cartoons. In 1997, satellite television finally came to Canada, with the two major providers being ExpressView and Star Choice. Both sought to corner the market by offering trade-ins on American receivers, in addition to free programming to those who chose to go legal, my parents included. That same year, the Canadian cartoon channel Teletoon launched, a portmanteau of television and cartoon. Both providers carried it. We went with Star Choice. Unlike Cartoon Network, which largely geared its programming towards kids and young adults, Teletoon really embraced the medium as a whole, presenting animation that was as eclectic and diverse as possible, or as the country. It aired 24/7, and initially its programming blocks were organized by demographic, with each represented by a different animation style. From 5 a.m. to 3 p.m., content was aimed at preschool-age kids, with the promos and bumpers rendered in claymation. From 3 to 6, kids, in traditional cell animation. 6 to 9 was for families, cut-out collage animation. And finally, adults, 9 p.m. till 5 p.m., represented by papier-mâché stop-motion animation. We have some laxer rules here in Canada as what you can show on TV. At least we did back then, and the adult bumpers fully embrace this. Plenty of sexually suggestive images, which I'm sure thrilled parents tuning in early. This work was done by Cup of Coffee Studios here in Toronto. Canada has a rich tradition of animation, thanks in no small part to the NFB, the National Film Board, which had a heavy presence on Teletoon early on. Leonard Maltin actually hosted a series profiling some of the more popular shorts, frame by frame. This was because, as part of its mandate, Teletoon had to produce a certain amount of original and Canadian content. Much of its original material was co-produced with other studios and countries, adding to its international flair. Now, I thought I'd look back, not at all the blocks or shows, but some I remember fondly, starting with Teletoon Unleashed. This became its late-night, adult-oriented weekend block once they abandoned their original format. It would eventually merge with the teen-centric block The Detour to become Teletoon at Night, resembling Cartoon Network's Adult Swim. Its first incarnation, though, Teletoon Unleashed, hit me at the perfect time. I was in middle school, and this was the second wave of adult animation following The Simpsons, which also briefly aired on Teletoon early on. The 2-hour block, if I remember correctly, started with The Oblongs, starring Will Ferrell. It originally aired on the WB and followed an impoverished family, each afflicted by some sort of horrible deformation due to radiation. The Oblongs was followed by my personal favorite, Mission Hill, created by former Simpsons showrunners Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein. It also first aired on WB and featured 20-something hipsters navigating life in a trendy neighborhood in the big city. Growing up in the country, this was a life I aspired to have. Looking back, I got it, complete with its mediocrity and eventual disappointment. I felt the same about the next show, Undergrads, and my college experience. This was produced with MTV and attempted to show the average freshman year of recognizable stereotypes, so nerd, frat boy, etc. And lastly, John Callahan's Quads, based on the comics of the late cartoonist. Callahan was disabled. He became a quadriplegic in a car accident, hence the name Quads. He actually taught himself how to draw after his accident, after regaining partial use of his hands. He made his drawings by holding his pen between his two hands. The show featured depictions of people with disabilities or otherwise marginalized, and while his work received its fair share of controversy and even protest, it's worth mentioning it was warmly received by many with disabilities. He felt his dark and sardonic takes on disability gave representation to those tired of, in his words, the pity and the patronizing. His is quite the inspiring story. As Teletoon Unite morphed and grew, new series debuted, my favorite of which was Clone High, another MTV co-production featuring clones of famous people throughout history and the struggles they experienced in high school. This, like actually all these shows, has gone on to develop a cult following, and I think all deserve to be better known. They certainly got me through some shit. While Cartoon Network and Nick introduced me to an American cartoon renaissance, Teletoon showed me there was a whole world of animation out there. I lost Cartoon Network before Toonami debuted, so Teletoon was my introduction to anime through the hybrid Cyber 6. This was a Canadian-produced, Japanese animated sci-fi series adapted from the comics by Argentinian cartoonist Carlos Maglia. It was reminiscent of Aeon Flux, with the hero, Cyber 6, the result of a genetic experiment battling their creator while balancing a teaching career. There were some interesting things going on here with gender, as a hero, Cyber 6 presents female, while assuming the appearance and identity of a male teacher who died. So, fun stuff. Teletoon also aired Ninja Scroll and Dragon Ball Z early on. They can only acquire so much at a time, so you got used to repetition, seeing the same episodes over and over again. So much of that original programming tripped me out, to be honest. I had known animation as cartoons of a certain style, and suddenly there was all of this. However, Teletoon wasn't all good. There was Nelvana's horrible Donkey Kong Country. Though A for effort, this was actually one of the first TV series to be animated entirely with mocap, which I guess is notable. Also Caillou, which actually launched the channel, but shitting on this seems unnecessary, given even at the time I was hardly the demo. I was, however, the target audience for Ned's Newt, a Canadian-German collaboration featuring a shape-shifting newt, as well as the French co-production Animal Crackers, another comic adaptation I remember being on, but really can't tell you anything about from memory. I more or less fell off Teletoon in 2008. It still exists today, as now does Cartoon Network Canada, but most of my affection comes from its launch until around 2004-2005, when it was a huge part of my identity. So thank you for indulging me. I know these shows are not exclusive to Teletoon, but this is how I experienced them. Feel free to leave your memories or comments down below. I'm also planning on doing a Q&A soon, so leave a question as well. We'll be looking at more Canadian television in a process video over on Patreon. There's fresh free sleepcore there too, so support us if you can. Give this video a thumbs up. Roll in isolation. Thanks for choosing to spend yours with me. Stay safe, everyone. Now that I'm loving